Welcome everybody to the Escape America Now and also Partido Independencia, Independence Party in Chile seminar or webinar for the, this is November the 5th, 2019. And this webinar was called out on very short notice with only about an hour of advance notice. And therefore the intended purpose is really to allow people who have concerns to show up and ask them if they want to in live. Otherwise, just to listen to the video on YouTube, presuming it doesn't get banned like one of our videos did. I don't intend to show anything that they might consider objectionable this time. I'm not even sure what they considered objectionable when they banned our video one time. But anyway, that'll be a recurring thing that I bring up often in these kinds of meetings. Chile has been going through some tremendous turmoil, and as one person at the march I attended today, or it wasn't a march, it was the defensive action today in Reñaca, which is part of Viña del Mar, is up till 2 weeks ago, this was a really great country. And right now, we have to emphasize it was a really great country because we have tremendous, significant problems here still going on. And there's a continual fight for power, really pushed by the Communist Party. And although you don't hear them claiming credit for everything, but certainly well orchestrated by somebody, as I pointed out earlier, with the acts of destruction that they're trying to do in the different marches, calculated to go at certain times in order to have the maximum prolonged effect of destabilizing the government, causing President Piñera to resign, and then them be able to take power. Or if he can get impeached, that's better, because then they automatically get their leftist Quintana, the president of the Senate, would take over as president. And it's worked to a significant extent because Piñera has always been a very weak president, and he's a guy who looks for popularity. And his popularity is, it got as low as 14% recently. It's up a little bit now, I think. But it's the lowest popularity of any president, certainly that I can remember, and probably anywhere in Chilean history, from what I know, at least the 20th century and 21st century. And so Piñera is now willing to, talk about trashing the old constitution that was ratified first in 1980 and then modified in 1989, and replace it with something new, which would be far juicier and far more full of different kinds of communist and other socialist agendas. One guy at the march today, or he was one of the advanced guard of the march that never actually made it to where we were, was talking about how he just thought it was horrible that Chile had private waterways and something, and that government should own them all, and therefore there would be justice if the government owned the water, for instance. That's the kind of stuff that they're looking to put in. At any rate, those are the problems that Piñera has, and he wants to be popular, and therefore he's willing to put in, and he put in a new leftist cabinet, more left wing, far more than center left, I think. And now they want to humanize capitalism, and they want to do a number of other things to make the left happy with them. All this does is incite the left to even be more radicalized. And what they do, since he's made those declarations, those ovations, the violence continues. And lately it's been here in Viña del Mar. Yesterday, these people who have already destroyed, looted, burned down 1,300 businesses, plus wiped out, one news report said 40,000 micro businesses, people that sell stuff on the street or kiosks or whatnot. Apparently these things are just the beginnings of things to come, because they continue to do them, burning down, looting stores, whether it's a Burger King or a pharmacy or an auto dealership here in Viña yesterday. They started a fire in a hotel, which evidently was put out, because I drove by it today and it didn't look burned down. The Best Western on Viana Street, going through downtown. And so at any rate, these are the practical outcomes of when you cave in to violence. And these guys to say, we want more, we want this, and we're going to break things and destroy things until you give it to us. like the left is doing, especially these communist types. And there are, of course, looters with them too. I should mention that. It's not all principled communists or anything like that. They're manipulated masses, and they are always followed by a bunch of criminals and, you know, scumbags or all around scoundrels that want to destroy things that other people have and loot stores. I don't think it's only communists that do that kind of stuff, although I'm sure they participate. It's not certainly not above their character. So by caving in, Piñera has left this great vacuum of defenseless people because they can't carry their own arms here in Chile, most of them at any rate. And many of them know how to shoot who are members of gun clubs and whatnot. That's great. And they could put up a good defense against these leftist radicals, excuse me. But you know, it's hard for them to do. They're not accustomed to do that. We're not a National Guard situation here, kind of like. We have a government, and supposedly the government is supposed to have military and police forces that protect citizens from violent protests and people destroying property. They just haven't done it. This last week, they threw a Molotov cocktail or something, some incendiary device at some cops, 2 female cops. And the stories are conflicting. It's either one female cop was lit on fire, burned, and so did one male, or it was 2 female ones. But either way, two people suffered significant injuries from being burned as something was thrown at them. They are allowed to use lethal force if somebody throws a Molotov cocktail at them. They didn't know who it was, so they didn't return fire, and they're all too busy trying to put that aerosol spray on them to knock out the fire. We've also seen cops knocked off their motorcycles, beaten, pushed, and then chased and knocked down and then kicked on the ground and beaten up more. That happened in La Serena. There's been peltings of Carabineros or cops here in Osorno. So they had to retreat into their own vehicle and run away from a mob of a couple hundred people, or maybe it wasn't that many. It seemed like a lot on the video. But at any rate, they had to retreat. And the same was true in Rancagua and other parts of Santiago. It's a disaster. There's nothing else to say. And Piñera will not unleash the cops and the military to use their weapons and shoot at these people. That's the only thing communists understand historically, is when they actually receive bullets or buckshot, some kind of violent response against their violent aggression, will they actually stop. Otherwise, they'll continue to take ground. And so that's what we got in Chile. And it's not to the point of being something like a civil war, but it is still something very serious that it could escalate even to that point when people finally say, we've had enough. We can't count on the government to protect us. So let's just all get out our guns and start shooting back. And then the communists, of course, have their own stash of military-grade weapons, which is a very dangerous thing here when they start pulling those out. If they do that, will the military then step in? I don't know. Under Piñera, I sort of doubt it. The guy does not have the backbone of an octopus. I mean, he just won't do anything to stop this. And it's just an extraordinary amount of destruction, as I covered in the last webinar. So today, the one bright spot when we see all this these horrible things going on, and we keep thinking maybe we'll get some reprieve now. Well, before I get to the bright spot, let me remind you, the communists, although they're evil, they're not stupid. They realize that when Piñera or the other people are down and begging for mercy, that's the time that they need to go for the jugular and go after us. They are not going to stop. They are going to look at it as an opportunity to destroy their enemy, who they hate with religious fervor and passion. And so that will be what they do now. They will continue daily to go and attack and do what they can to destroy things and hurt people. So in order to stop that, there was our circulator run around in our community groups here in Reñaca, where I live, which is one of the upper class barrios of the Viña del Mar area. And we're also adjacent to another one, which is called Concón Sur. Kind of make they're very, not only adjacent, they're very close, and most people blur the lines between the two areas, even though one is in one commune and the other is in another. People would just show up and put on these fluorescent yellow jackets that Michelle Bachelet, the former president, required all of us to buy in case we had a roadside emergency, so we could be easily cited as reflective on the side of the road. So everybody took those things out of their cars, put them on, and about 325 of us showed up in Reñaca after seeing the destruction in Viña, which almost 24 years here, I've never seen the communists get the courage up to actually come into Viña del Mar, to the nicer areas, like they did yesterday. And so it was shocking for everybody else here too. And that the thought was, not, that's enough. They're not coming here. And if the 7,000 people continue to march here to Reñaca, we're going to withstand them. And so we were called by the leftist newspaper a militia, illegal militia, accused us of discriminating against a lesbian that was there. Or even some people even said there was somebody who hit her, which is all false. I was there the whole time. There was no one who got hit. She actually claimed, I think, in one of the videos that he was holding up his baton at her. One guy was, and she took that as being hit, apparently. But she had no marks, no bruises, just a story to tell, a big show. And so we were there peacefully, and we weren't looking for trouble, nobody. We just wanted to defend ourselves so that my grocery store doesn't get burned down like they've done to hundreds of others in Chile. I'd like to be able to go to the store and buy food. I also like to see if we can have a few other nice benefits of things that are here, like banks, or maybe, Chile Express, the private delivery service, or perhaps money exchange houses, or maybe, I don't know, there's a gun club here. There are other things we like here, a lot of small things in a mall that's nearby, stationery stores, just shops you might go to on a daily basis, or other things, other services you might encounter. And so here, all these things were on our hearts and minds to say, we're just not going to be victims of these communists. And so everybody went down there with different kinds of armaments. I have no idea who was carrying guns. No one revealed that fact to me, and I didn't ask. Although when you're 325 against a mob of 7,000, you have to have something that's able to resist them to some extent, especially if they start attacking private property, and you want to stop them. And there's a way you could make a line, I suppose, but we're talking about women on our side. Maybe 10% of the people there were women, unsurprisingly, and there were probably a fair number of older folks, even older than me. I'm 56. Probably aren't in our prime of our life to be out there defending anything, but nevertheless capable of some kind of defense. And there were plenty of young men there with bats and hockey sticks, or small sticks that kind of look like hockey sticks. Don't know what maybe they're field hockey or something. And there were other little batons that look like they're solid steel things that look like they could break a person's legs, and I'm sure that's what the purpose was. And they were going to defend themselves against these criminals. Criminals never showed up. As I said, the Carabineros arrived in a number of them. They were given a contingent of 15 to hold off these supposed 7,000 people marching in, which is a joke. And that's why they were very happy to see us, and we were happy to see them. There was a lot of happiness between the two groups. We applauded for them. And they said they would defend us as best we could. We didn't have to worry about that. Of course, we're still worried about it because we don't think that they're going to stand a chance, and we know that they won't open fire because it's against their rules to do so, and they'll be accused of having human rights violations if they do so. So anyway, we were there to make a stand. The thing about communists is when they do get lethal force used against them, they do begin to fall back. And these aren't trained militia, or these aren't people who are coming as soldiers at us. They're just a bunch of manipulated masses who like to destroy things, many of them. And if some of them were to fall in the act, there would be a retreat very quickly of these people. And I think even a small number of people who are dedicated to preserving their property would be able to do that and not just be killed in the process themselves. But when you've got violence and you've got a government that won't defend you, there has to be something that happens. So it's encouraging that we had an action today that was spontaneous, not condoned by the government, not in favor of, or not in any way favoring one particular political group or party. It was just the party of protecting private property and life in Reñaca. That's it. Everybody had that much in common. I have no idea what their other ideologies might have been. I suspect most of them are on the right here, not communists, because otherwise they'd be on the other side. But other than that, I don't know any particular details about them. I saw some of my neighbors there. I saw some people I knew from the gun club, a few anyway, people like that. I didn't know most of them. There were some organizers or people trying to organize with a megaphone, but it wasn't a well-organized offensive or anything, you might say, or defensive maneuver. It was just people who heard that they were going to try to show up and put on these yellow jackets, reflective jackets, and make a stand against these folks coming in and destroying stuff. And so we were there for about 2 hours, obviously, maybe 2.5. We realized it could be just a ruse that in Viña, the Carabineros had actually cut off the march, so they weren't going to continue up the coast to Reñaca. That, in fact, was the case. And if need be, if they reorganize themselves and go down now and try in the middle of the night to burn down stuff, we can all get down there in 10 minutes, I suppose. And there'll be different groups who report these kinds of things happening. And there are many people willing to go. The call right now is to have next time 10 times, or at least 5 times the number of people there. Because we do need more people who are willing to defend. And although they drove by, and many of them honked their horns, even buses honking their horns, because buses don't like communists either. They destroy their windows and to make it so they can't work. The drivers often get paid only if they run the route. And if they can't run the route because there are communists protesting, it's a real drag for them. And so at any rate, we need more people. We need to show that there will be force used against them if they come and try to harm us here. There's nothing else we can do against them. They don't listen to reason. The few advanced militia, or whatever you want to call them, the communists sent up to Reñaca, there's 10 of them or so, a couple of lesbians and another, and notably so, by the way, and making a big deal about their sexuality, saying that they were being discriminated against by us. Nobody did anything of the sort. They just don't like communists. And so if anything, she was discriminated against because she's a communist, not because she's a lesbian. Anyway, but there were people there, other strange, what to me were kind of strange people with strange ideas, poor people with misguided perceptions of life. And some of our people there were trying to reason. One guy said next to me, I'm a constitutional lawyer, and what you're saying is simply not true, and let me help you understand. Then other people would run and say, don't answer this guy. He's just a plant here to try to get on camera something going, kind of a fight or kind of a skirmish. They're all here just for part of a big show. Just ignore them. I tend to agree with the guy that if we're going to be out in the street, we need to try to educate these people, because maybe there are some truly lost souls that just don't understand, and we can teach them a few things, and that's fine. And if not, then we should just heckle them or preach the gospel to them. That's okay too, because I believe God can save anybody as a Christian, even a communist. And so I don't have any problem with that either, because that actually is another route that will work to remove their ideas from their minds over time, their crazy Marxist religion. But any of those things are, I think are fine ways to go about things. But there was no one unified way of going. There were many people there that were angry about what the communists and the other criminals have been doing here, and they were willing to fight. They just had enough. So that's the good news. In Chile, there is actually a point in which people are just going to be fed up and not going to put up with any more of it, and they're going to go and take a stand. It doesn't matter what the government does. The government is a total failure here as far as defending people. It's nothing against the Carabineros. I think they're great guys, great people, but they are totally have their hands tied. They are not allowed to shoot when people are throwing or doing with the damage that they're doing. It's just crazy to me that they're supposed to be there to protect life and property, and they don't do it. So the encouraging news is, yeah, we have people there mobilized to see it, and hopefully now this was a test case for Santiago, which is the same thing that's going to happen there, much larger scale. And those people need to know that if they do it there, there'll be people in Santiago in the streets also, or in other major cities in Chile, like Concepcion, the southern part especially, where there are the nicer areas of town, and La Serena, the same thing, although that's dominated by communists up there in the 4th region generally. But still, there is going to be some defense put up if they just want to roll into town and destroy everything where we live. That's just not gonna be the case. It's not gonna be that easy for them. So they were probably watching. We had people on the telling us that there were plants there. We saw them. Some of these people, as I mentioned, giving reports, advanced reconnaissance information to others somewhere along the line. You could see them using their cells and WhatsApp, just like we were. They were taking advantage of that. There were people on the cliff above that were looking down and observing. And some people had said, because I saw some yellow jackets up there, that yeah, they indeed had found out that they were also some communist and other insurgent people up there taking an advantage or taking a look to see what was actually there, what they were going to be up against, because they want to know how far they can push without getting resistance. It's easy and cowardly to go where there's no resistance and break things and destroy people's lives and stuff like that. And that people have no insurance to pay for the destruction. Their lives are dramatically affected and reduced to poverty in many cases. So now they know, and we also know that we have a fair number of folks, and we simply need to have greater numbers next time to make sure that they are not allowed to invade and do the conquering here that they have elsewhere. And perhaps other people now in Chile will do the same. So perhaps we have a bright spot in all of this, as I've said. Okay, that's the quick overview. There are very few people live on this webinar, and it's understandable again because we only announced it an hour ahead of time. In some cases, the email didn't go out until 45 minutes ago, or 45 minutes before we started. And so I'll just open the floor here. Does anybody want to unmute their mic and ask a question, or send me a question in the chat box that I might be able to answer live? And if not, we'll leave it as a video for everybody to see and get the update that I sent them. I hope that it was clear what I said. There's no missing pieces for people. I will say, while you're thinking about that since this can be seen overseas and in other places, it may be that you don't understand where Reñaca is. Reñaca is a barrio, or a neighborhood of Viña del Mar, which is right next to Valparaíso, about 130 kilometers northwest or west-northwest of Santiago. And it's the second largest population center in Chile. Maybe if you count the far inland where the metro and buses reach from here, maybe 1 million people or a little bit less. That's what we're dealing with. So that's the second largest city in Chile. And it has a significant number of people who are well off, I guess, compared to other Chileans. And that's why the test in Reñaca was an important one, I think, for them to feel. They butchered and wasted Valparaíso, which is a very poor and really hideous place now, even though it was so wealthy and free market and wonderful for so long. It is that had changed in the last 50 years dramatically, and probably more than that. Maybe the last 80 years, it's really been in decline. And so they have a heyday over there and burn things and destroy things. The Chilean Congress is in Valparaíso. So it's nearby, within 25 kilometers. But this is really the first time that I can remember the violence actually came up to this section, where they planned purposely to go and hit them where it hurts, as they said in their ad. Let's not let these guys do it. Let's go hit them where it hurts and go destroy them where they live, this kind of thing. That was the rhetoric that was used. And I think they would have done it if the Carabineros didn't dissuade them. Okay, so that's where we are. We're in Viña del Mar, Reñaca. Okay, Matt says, what do you think would be a realistic demands from the people who are legally protesting, not rioting, and destroying? It's hard to say because that is not a unified coalition. They are all mixed with either tentacles in their groups or pushed directly by these communists and stuff. And the people who are destroying are not just politically interested. Many of them are just opportunistic criminals that couldn't care less about politics. They just want free stuff. And so they take advantage of it when it's going. So it's hard. I would say that most of the marchers do not agree with the idea that these criminals can go in and just loot stores. I think that's probably true, although I can't be 100% certain, but that's the feeling I get, that most Chileans are not happy with the violence, other than the communists and, of course, the criminals themselves. There may be some who are, because they want to destabilize the government and so forth. Destroying the metro, for instance, hurt them more than anybody else. It's not the wealthy who use the metro as much in Santiago. And by wasting 118 out of 136 stations, and now I believe there are about 80 stations they've got functioning. I heard that today, trying to get something back to normal. But in the meantime, those people, instead of having an hour commuting 3 hours each way, trying to wait in bus lines that are really long to get on, crammed in like sardines into buses that are swelling and buses that don't want to run because they're afraid they're going to lose their property. It's a mess. 100 stoplights don't work, or traffic lights, or at least maybe more than that in Santiago, because they've been damaged in riots. So those people have hurt the people that they're supposedly trying to help. And the communist idea is to do that in order to destabilize the government, just like they tried with Pinochet, and then force the government to cower before it and resign and give the communists power. Okay, so their demands, what do they basically want? They want to nationalize all minerals and water rights. You know, it's all ours, throw out all these foreign companies, which is total suicide as far as economics here goes. Chile exists because it exports natural resources, not because it tries to produce them here with internally and then export them later. We need investment from foreign companies that are efficient in how to grow fruit, salmon, pork, wine, and minerals. People know how to do that efficiently who are in big companies. They don't if they're the Chileans. But the communists have never understood that principle at all. No surprise. So that's one thing they want. They want to nationalize things. They also want to reduce the work week to 40 hours, and they want to get paid a minimum of 500,000 pesos, which is roughly, I don't know, $725 a month or something as the minimum wage, instead of 301,000 pesos. So they want pretty much an 80% bump in that for the lower segment of the population, which will, of course, generate tremendous unemployment. They don't care about that either. They are looking for other things too in there, like they want a new constitution written, one that gives them guarantees of free college educations and free high school and regular basic education or grade school training of quality, which is impossible. They just don't understand economics. But yeah, they're going to have the state run everything and have it be high quality somehow. They believe that will happen. They also want to have their pensions never be lower than the minimum wage, or the 500,000 they talked about today of pesos. It goes up with inflation here with something we have called the UF. So they would forever have that. They would effectively be supplementing the private Social Security contributions they have, and then forcing taxpayers to give them let them participate in the pay-as-you-go kind of system like the U.S. has. They want that too. They want minimum pensions. They're not happy with what they've got. That's another issue. They actually believe that the pension system before or during Allende, the communists' time here in the 70s and the 60s, was good and fair, which is bizarre since it was anything but. It was a total disaster. Most poor people went without pensions entirely. Okay, so those are some of the demands. Those are the main demands they've got. Giving in to all those things is to give into a socialist interventionist state. Piñera hasn't been willing to give in to all of them, but is willing to give in on some of them and compromise, like do a 350,000 peso minimum wage and go along with the 40-hour work week, even though Chileans aren't very productive, et cetera. So we're in the midst of going down like that to try to meet them that way. All right, so you've got a few other questions you're writing here, Matt. And Joe, I see, has also got some. Let me see if I can sure I go back and finish these. What do you think the realistic demands of the people who are illegally protesting, not rioting or destroying? Yeah, I've given you those. And none of them are realistic. I mean, they will destroy Chile's economy quickly. Any of those things I just mentioned will have a dramatic downward effect. Nationalizing minerals will have an immediate destructive effect that we could never recover from until it was abolished again. So yeah, that is the situation there. Joe says a lot of the demands are based on lies. Minimum wage info is based on lies. Income inequality has been shrinking. Income has been increasing. Poverty has been shrinking. a lot. We're talking about from 50% in 1973 to 8% today. And we have less income inequality than most Latin American countries. But who cares? I mean, the Gini coefficient is a joke. I mean, it doesn't matter that the nation's 20 billionaires or whatever they might have. In Chile, I think there's only like 8 billionaires, have so much more income or wealth than me or you. It is really irrelevant. The only thing that matters, unless you're just a guy that loves envy, is that your income and opportunities are increasing. You're not stagnant or losing that ground every year while they're going up. As long as they get richer and you can get richer or wealthier relative to your previous spot, you're happy. That's a good economy. That's what we want. You have curves that are increasing as time goes on over time. The actual gap between the rich and poor is absurdly irrelevant. It's absurd and irrelevant. In fact, if you can imagine, we would be worse in Chile if we had no billionaires at all. It's better that we have some of those guys, and even though they're filthy rich, okay, it's still better for everybody else that they're around. So what Joe wrote is totally right, and the lies that they're spreading about Chile are completely ridiculous. Anybody who has any knowledge of history or public policy realizes that Chile is a miracle on account of an economic miracle, on account of the policies that were input by libertarians from the Chicago School. And that's what made it go from the poorest country in Latin America, or one of the two, tied with Haiti maybe and Bolivia, to be the wealthiest. That was the reason why. And now to try to drag us back into the Stone Ages or socialism is insane. And yet these communists here are exactly that. This showed it under Bachelet's socialism. So Piñera isn't the issue. Right. That's true. Those policies of Bachelet were really, really bad. And Piñera has not put those kind of bad policies in. Piñera's main problem right now is not maintaining order in country, protecting property rights, that like government's supposed to do. Otherwise, we might as well just have anarchy and everybody carries their gun and saves their tax money. It would be a lot cheaper for everybody and probably more effective, rather than have a state that doesn't work. Anyway, there's a huge disparity between the uber wealthy and most of the population. While it's not as close as the U.S., it's a lot better than any other Latin American country. Yeah, okay. Actually, I think the U.S. isn't the U.S.'s Gini coefficient very similar to Chile's? I don't remember. Again, it's irrelevant to me. It's a stupid United Nations kind of benchmark or something that the left uses to make complaints about people, which are irrelevant. So I discount it completely. Matt says, I remember when I first came to Chile 12 years ago, I worked on minimum wage while I was waiting for my visa. I also remember that with minimum wage, I made it through the month, but now I forget it. It's impossible considering the prices have skyrocketed. Yes, I suppose it's better than other Latin American countries, but this country has potential. The minimum wage, when you got here 12 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, would have been very close to 180,000 pesos a month. You can check that, or you may remember what it was when you were here. It was horrendous, right? Now it's 301. So, and Piñera's already offered, and it looks like it's going to go through Congress to be 350. So let's say that's pretty close to double in 12 years what the minimum wage is. I can pretty much assure you that prices have not doubled on almost anything else that you have. And that includes cars, it includes electric bills, gas bills, water bills, fruits and vegetables, which have actually gone down, I think, over time, and also other kinds of foods in the supermarket. Many things have gone up: meat, cheese, tolls on the highway, those have certainly gone up. Imported goods, especially now that the dollar has gone up from 500 to 750 almost, that makes a big difference, obviously, in the cost of goods that are imported. I remember even things like looking at the American ice cream that you could get for a while at 3,000 pesos for a 1.5 I guess it's 3 quarts. I don't know, whatever it is. Think of ice cream. And now it's 4,500 pesos. So it's gone up 50%. And that is entirely due to the exchange rate. So that does affect. If you buy stuff that's imported from abroad, it's going to make a big difference there. But I think if you think about it, Matt, things have not gone up in price double. So people who are making the minimum wage still are doing way better than they were before. That's just a myth to think that they're hurting. They've actually got more disposable income now than they did 12 years ago with the minimum wage rising. What they don't always have is jobs, because by raising the minimum wage, you don't create employment or wealth. You simply knock out people from the job market that otherwise that can't work now, that otherwise would be able to because of their low skills or because of their low quality, low productivity, whatever it is, aren't able to go into the job market and get a higher paying job yet. That happens with the elderly and with the young typically. So you get rid of those guys out of the market. You also help people with labor union contracts, because if the minimum wage is higher, it allows labor unions who can replace one of their union guys with, say, 5 workers. And so they say, well, 5 workers are 180,000 pesos. That means I can, as long as my union guys are making 900,000 or less, they're not going to be replaced by hiring 5 unskilled laborers, because that's the ratio. It takes 5 unskilled guys to do the work of 1 really highly trained union guy. And so when they raise the minimum wage, it has no effect at all directly on the union guy, because he's already making way more than the minimum wage. But it allows them to boost it to 5 times the new minimum wage again, their current salaries, and they won't lose their jobs. So they can go up to $1.5 million on that example I gave you, and that permits them to make more money for themselves. That's why unions paradoxically always support increases in the minimum wage, because it gives them and their people a shot at higher wages without having to worry about being replaced by the lower end workers or the unskilled laborers. And you'll find that happening here in Chile too. So those are I think just facts about Chile. There's no way that the minimum wage claims they make are correct. Obviously, if we're talking about making the same minimum wage as they did 12 years ago versus now, yeah, that's a different story. But since nobody does, it's an irrelevant case. Okay, let's see. Have you heard about the rumors on the exchange rate regarding the peso dollar? Will products increase or production increase as a result? Well, okay. You're asking a question that's going to be multifaceted. It really requires lots of different inputs to be able to answer correctly instead of just isolating one thing or the other. Basically, when the dollar continues to be stronger, like it has been, and the peso falls, I think today it was, or yesterday it was 741. I didn't even look today. You could tell me if you go to xe.com and see it. Maybe it was 742 yesterday. If it continues to rise like that, it forces people who are basically in a situation of buying imported goods to pay a lot more for them. So automobiles, for instance, are going to be more expensive in Chile. Gasoline and diesel will normally be more expensive in Chile. There will also be things like blue jeans, anything we get from China, which will probably also go up in price. Sometimes shoes that are imported. Things that are here, that are produced here, will not be affected as dramatically, although in real terms, you're going to see the inflation at some point catch up. Because those things that are causing the dollar to the peso exchange rate are often going to be tied to things that are going on in Chile that are causing effectively an inflation or the devaluation of the peso. And so when that happens, it's a potential other problem. But remember, there's a readjustment every year for people's salaries and for debt payments on a regular basis, because instead of being denominated in pesos, debts are denominated in UFs, and the UF calculation, the change in the UF over a year, is simply added to everybody's salary, usually in March, so that they don't fall behind in any way. So I would not see that, well, to answer your question, will production actually increase? Now, I mean, local production might, depends if it gets to a certain point. It's so, The production in Chile is normally very inefficient, and therefore we can buy foreign products cheaper and of higher quality than if they're produced here. Chileans are not great at manufacturing anything, frankly. And so there may be some things that actually are. So they're good at producing fruits and vegetables and pork products and yogurt and copper and silver and king crab and salmon. They know how to do that. Foreign companies come and help them do all those things, and they do a fine job at it. But when it actually comes to making things, yeah, they do some stuff. They make some paint, and they make some toilet bowls, and well, they do a number of things. You know, they have conduit they make, for instance. But it's not a tremendous manufacturing economy. So will production go up when imports stop? Yeah, but it's not going to be that much of a boom because it's not doesn't happen that much. And the downside effect from lack of foreign investment or making our products unattractive in any way because of the way they're produced or any other reason is going to have the opposite effect on productivity here in production. So it's a complex answer. I don't think it's one you can easily come up with based on the information you gave me. Okay, they are good at making artisanal things. Yeah, right. Yeah, you can go and buy a few of those things up. I'm sure that really adds to the GDP a lot in Chile. Nationalization of water would be an excellent idea. Oh, really? Why do you suppose that would be excellent? You think governments that control and monopolize water somehow make it more plentiful, or that it's it's going to be more fairly distributed to people? Why would that be the case? Governments constantly are inefficient bunglers of things and cause shortages of anything they touch because they produce it incorrectly and allocate resources incorrectly. The free market has always been the better way to allocate or designate resources in the world. Okay, well, at any rate, those are a few of the questions that came in today. This has been a good short webinar so far. If you have a last question, go ahead and ask it. You can either unmute yourself or you can write it in the text line there, Joe or Matt. And if anyone else is on the way, that's fine too. Otherwise, we'll leave it for the audience to discover themselves later on YouTube as they watch the video. I give them the update here for what's happening in Chile. I will comment here also to say that I didn't make it clear that since the protests are going to continue, and we have every reason to believe Piñera will continue to back down and they will continue to put pressure on him. We expect that we will have to be there in Viña or down in Reñaca every day, every other day probably, and especially on the weekend. So that's tragic in a way, but it is encouraging in another that we can put up a resistance, and we all need to participate in that. We also need to be participating in the Independence Party here, which in Spanish is Partido Independencia.cl. And we have a forum called Libertar.cl. If you speak Spanish, that's the most useful for those two parties, especially if you're here in Chile, that websites, I should say. And we need participation from people to help us combat these ideas that communists have that are so damaging for people. We need to have more warm bodies editing videos and participating in outdoor events, carrying signs when necessary. We need to have people who can write articles for our websites. Those are important pieces, especially in Spanish language. We do have chat groups for people that are English speakers only that I mentioned before. And if you would like, I'll see if Joe can pull up the link and put it into the chat room again so people can see it. You can go there and sign up and be part of the WhatsApp group in English. Our WhatsApp group in English has between 50 and 60 people. We have a bit more than that in the Spanish speaking side, but the English speaking people can participate there and get updated on what's happening in Chile. They're also able to obviously donate and take advantage of their positions wherever they might be to help Chile become free again and stay free. That requires us to have an active role. And so I've taken one, and I hope that you will as well. EscapeAmericaNow.info has some latest articles and other things there to see and keep up on these webinars. And so we will look forward to hearing more about your participation. Matt's final question was, what would be your next step on creating a party? Well, I've mentioned this before. The Independence Party is what we would like to form here in Chile. And you can see its website if you speak Spanish at partidoindependencia.cl. Joe is just giving you the site to join the WhatsApp group in English. And that should be something you do. There you can ask questions directly to me or everybody else, and they can give you information, things that you need to know. And we'd also be very interested in hearing what you had to say about different issues and articles you might write. You can pass those through Joe and see if they can be published on one of our 2 websites. So we look forward to your participation and that of many others, especially for the expats who are living here in Chile and can have some comment about life here as well. So we look forward to hearing from you through those 2 different vehicles and through the WhatsApp. Joe, we should also put that in the YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Since you so kindly copied that for me, I'm going to see if I can copy it and put it into the YouTube stream here. That's being taped live, and these other 2 websites as well. And there we have it. Okay, that's been a good quick webinar, guys. Thank you so much for your participation. If something else changes and we have once again something happening that's really interesting here in the country, like today's events were, I'll be back on and we'll have another webinar again, time permitting for me. And hopefully, working together, we can continue to make this one of the best places in the world to live. So this is Dr. John Coben for Escape America Now, also for Partido Independencia, signing off. I also have a show tomorrow night in Spanish, the Libertarian Voz, La Voz Libertaria, and the Libertarian Show of John Coben. On Thursday night, we have Historic Baptists, which are also libertarians in our study. So if you're interested in any of those, just make a note of it in the chat group in WhatsApp, and you'll be given the information on how you can join or participate in any of those meetings as well. For now, then, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you soon. Have a great evening.